Okay, so good afternoon, class. So our topic for today is the time value of money. When we say time value of money, it is a concept acknowledging that possessing money today provides the opportunity to invest and earn interest, increasing its future value. The time value of money therefore suggests that money invested is worth more than its present value. Now, under this topic, we will be tackling the two major concepts, which is yung ating future value at yung present value. Both concepts consider three factors, which is the principal, interest rate, at time period. When we say principal, it is the original sum of money that is borrowed in a loan or placed into an investment. So for time period, ito naman yung number of years. Pwede rin, it can be expressed in months, quarters, semi-annual, or other terms. And here, we can use the timelines to plot the timing of cash flows. Pag sinabi nating timeline, it is the graphical representation used to show the timing of cash flows. Here, you can notice that there is an interval from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 3. So, these are the time periods which can be years, months, sabi ko nga, quarters, or whatever. And the time 0 here, ito yung today, the period where you placed your money. So, it is today. And it is the beginning of period 1. The time 1 here is 1 period from today. And it is both the end of period 1 and the beginning of period 2. And so on and so forth. So this tick mark here, ito yung nagre-represent ng end and beginning of the next period. And you can also see from this timeline that we show the present value amount of the money invested today. And here will be the value in the future, or yung tinatawag nating future value ng ating money. Also, you will notice that in this timeline, reflected din kung ilan yung interest for the investment. At kapag sinabi nating interest, ano ba yung interest? Interest is the cost of using money over time. It represents the time value of money. It can be an expense or income, depending sa perspective that we are looking at. Pag interest expense, it is the cost of the excess resources to the borrower for the use of the money. And kapag interest income naman, it is the benefit of the excess resources to the lender of the money. So, meron tayong two ways to compute interest. Ito yung ating simple interest and compound interest. Pag sinabi nating simple interest, it is the interest that is paid or earned only on the original amount. So, take note that it is only on the original amount or principal borrowed or lent. So, the formula for computing simple interest is the principal times interest times the number of time periods. So, it's SI is equal to P at 0 times I times N, where SI is your simple interest, P0 is your principal, and N is your number of time periods. Now, let's try. For example, assume that you deposit 100 pesos in savings account paying 8% simple interest and keep it there for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, the amount of interest accumulated is how much? So, sabi natin, ang formula for simple interest is principal times interest times the number of periods. So, 100 times 0.08 or 8% times 10, you get 80 for your simple interest. Eh ma'am, magkano naman yung kanyang future value na? But before we compute for the future value, alamin muna natin, ano ba yung future value? From the word itself, may infer na natin that it is the value at some future time of a present amount of money or a series of payments evaluated at a given interest rate. In contrast sa present value, na ito naman yung current value of a future amount of money or series of payments evaluated at a given interest rates. So going back to the problem, to get the future value of the 100 deposit at 8% simple interest, we simply add the interest to the principal or the original amount invested. Take note that the interest we computed in simple interest is the interest only on the principal. Diba? Bakit natin yun ini-emphasize? Because you will see the distinction later on when we compute for the compound interest. So now, how much is the future value? So that is the principal plus your simple interest. So, 100 the principal plus 80, you get therefore 180 as the future value of the 100 pesos deposit 10 years from now. Next example, ABC Corporation deposits 10,000 pesos in a bank at 10% simple interest per annum for 3 years. How much is the interest and how much is the future value of the deposit at the end of 3 years? Paano ulit yung formula natin for simple interest? That is principal times interest times the number of years. So, ang ating principal is 10,000 times 10% times 3 years. So, you get your simple interest na 3,000. And your future value, therefore, at the end of 3 years is 3,000, which is your simple interest plus your principal ni 10,000. Kaya you get 13,000. Okay, so if we will plot that in a timeline, dito yung time 0, wherein you invested 10,000 pesos for 3 years, and the value of your money invested at the end of 3 years is 13,000 at 10% interest rate based sa yung principal. Okay? Now we move to the second type of interest, yung ating compound interest. When we say compound interest, it is the interest paid or earned on any previous interest earned as well as on the principal borrowed or lent. So, hindi lang principal yung mag-earn ng interest. Even your previous interest will also earn interest. Therefore, kapag sinabi natin compound interest, ito yung it is the interest paid on both the principal and the amount of interest accumulated in prior periods. Under this, we have the process of determining the future value when compound interest is applied is tinatawag nating compounding. So how do we compute the future value using compound interest rates? So your future value at end period is principal times 1 plus interest raised to n, wherein yung n is the number of periods. Or whether future value is equal to your principal times your future value interest factor at an interest rate for n period. Your FVIF is actually this, your 1 plus interest rate time raised to n. So, let's try to solve. Mr. A deposits $100 into savings account. If the interest rate is 8% compounded annually, how much will the $100 be worth at the end of 3 years? So, our formula again, that's principal times 1 plus interest raised to n. So, let's just substitute with the values. So, $100 times 1.08, which is 1 plus 8% raised to 3. 1.08 times 1.08 times 1.08, that is 1.2597 times $100. That's why you get $125.97, your future value for at the end of 3 years. We can also plot the same in a table. So, for here, your column 1 is your year, then followed by the beginning amount, your interest, and your ending or your future value. So, diba, at period 1, we have invested $100, earning 8% interest. Sabi natin, kapag compounding, hindi lang si principal yung nag-earn ng interest. Si interest will also earn interest. So, that is 100 times 8%, you get $8. So, 100 plus 8, your ending amount at period 1 is 108. Now, the beginning amount in period 2 is now 108, which is inclusive of your interest times 8%, you get 8.64. And you add the same from 108, that's why you arrive at 116.64. When you multiply 116.64 with 8%, you will get 9.33 interest. You add that from 116, you get 125, which is your future value at the end of 3 years. Both methods results to the same answer, $125.97. Okay, next example. ABC Corporation deposits $10,000 in bank at 8% interest compounded annually for 3 years. How much is the interest? How much is the future value of the deposit at the end of 3 years? So, just for emphasis, ano ulit yung ating formula? Your future value is equal to principal times 1 plus interest raised to the number of periods. So, in this case, your principal is 10,000, your interest is 8, and the number of periods is 3. So, 1.08 times 1.08 times 1.08, you get 1.2597 times 10,000, you get 12,597.12, your future value at the end of 3 years. Correction, this is 3. Ayan, 3. So, how much is your interest? You can actually just deduct 10,000, your principal, from the 12,597, and you'll get 2,597.12, or you can also do this, which is 1 plus interest rate raised to number of periods less 1 times your principal, you'll get your interest. Or pwede rin, you can use a table, katulad nung kanina, for period 1, 2, and 3. So, you have 10,000 principal times 8%, you'll get 800. You add that, you'll get 10,800 at the end of period 1. 10,800 times 8%, you'll get 864. and you add that from 10,800, you'll get 11,664. You multiply 11,664 by 8%, you'll get 933.12, and you add the same to 11,664, you'll arrive at your future value at the end of 3 years na 12,597.12. So if you add this, you'll get also 2,597.12 total interest in 3 years. So just to emphasize again, in compound interest, you also earn interest from your accrued interest, not just sa principal. Okay? So let's try this problem. The financial manager has the choice of leaving 1,000 peso with a bank paying 10% simple interest or 10% compound interest for 5 years. Which should he choose? So this is the simple and this is the compounding. Okay, so sabi natin, pag simple interest, si principal lang yung nag-earn ng interest. While in compounding, both the principal and accrued interest earns interest. So, paano na nga natin kinocompute si simple interest? That is just your principal times interest times the number of period. So, magkano yung ating principal? You have 1,000. Magkano yung ating interest? Meron tayong 10%. Ilan yung ating number of period? We have 5 years. So, 1,000 times 0.10 times 5, you get 500 na interest plus your principal na 1,000, you'll get your future value of 1,500 at the end of the year. You can also plot the same in a table, katulad nito. That is 1,000 times 10%, you get 100. You'll notice na in simple interest, straight naman itong ating interest. So, you add your interest from your beginning, you'll get your ending, and then you do the same until the 5th period, and you'll also arrive at 1,500 future value at the end of 5 years. Now for compounding, paano na nga natin kinocompute ang future value using your compound interest? So that is your principal times 1 plus interest rate raised to your number of period. So, or you can also use a table like this one. So let's try it in a formula. That is your FVN is equal to your P0 times 1 plus interest raised to N. Diba? Ganyan yung ating formula. So, magkano yung ating FVIF or your future value interest factor based on your 10% interest at 5 periods. So that is your 1.1 at period 1 times 1.1, you'll get 1.21 at period 2 times 1.1, you'll get 1.331 for period 3 times 1.1, you'll get 1.464 for period 4 times 1.1 again, and you'll get 1.610 for period 5. 1.610 times, magkano yung ating principal? 1,000. You'll get how much? You'll get 1,610.51. So, ayan. Di ba? Pareho din siya. And when we plot this in a table, as we have explained kanina, your beginning or your present value na 1,000 times 10% interest rate, you'll get 100 na interest. You add that from your present value, you'll get 1,100. Your value at the end of your period 1 times 10%, you'll get 110. You add that and you'll get 1,210. You multiply the same with 10%, you'll get 121. And when you add that from your beginning to 1,210, you'll get 1,331. And when you multiply the same again with 10% interest rate, you'll get 133.10. You add that and you'll get 1,464.10. And when you multiply that with 10%, you'll get 146.41. Adding that from your beginning, you'll get your ending or your future value at the end of 5th year na 1,610.51. When you add all of this interest earned during the 5 periods, you'll get also 610.51 pesos as your total interest. You'll notice that the compound interest is higher because the interest earns interest. Ito nga yung kanilang pinaka-distinction between simple and compound interest. Ulitin natin na in simple interest, only the principal earns interest, while in compound interest, the interest also earns interest together with the principal. Now, let's discuss future value in intra-period compounding. Pag sinabi nating intra-period compounding, it is compounding that occurs more than once a year. At pag sinabi nating compounding period naman, it is the calendar period which the compounding occurs, which could be semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly. And how do we compute your future value in intra-period compounding? That is, your future value at end period is equal to your present value times 1 plus interest rate divided by m raised to mn. Yung m is the number of times per year compounding occurs. So, pag semi-annual, syempre 2. Pag quarterly, 4. Pag monthly, 12. Diba? Now, let's try solving. Mr. A is torn between placing 1,000 in Atlanta Bank that pays 10% interest compounded annually or to National Bank that pays 10% interest compounded semi-annually. Between two banks, where shall he place the deposit? So, for Atlanta, how do we compute for the interest at one period? Are the future value at one period. So that is just your future value plus 1 plus interest rate raised to your number of period na 1. So 1.1 times 1,000 na principal, you'll get 1,100. And for National Bank, which is semi-annual yung kanyang compounding, that is your present value na 1,000 plus 1 times 1 plus interest rate divided by 2 kasi semi-annual raised to 2 times 1. So how much is that? 0.10 divided by 2 plus 1, that's 1.05. times 1.05, you'll get 1.1025 times 1,000, you'll arrive at 1,102.50. So if you will notice, increasing the frequency of compounding period makes the future value grow more rapidly because more interest is earned on a changing balance. Now, let's move to the distinction between your nominal interest rate and your effective interest rate. Pag sinabi nating nominal interest rate, it is simply your stated rate. You can usually say this in the terms of the loan. For example, a loan of 1,000 at 10% per annum. The 10% is your stated rate or your nominal interest rate. And when we say effective interest rate, we can also call this sometimes na your APR or your annual percentage rate. And it is the true interest rate, which may differ from the nominal rate depending on the frequency of compounding. And to compute for your EIR, that is 1 plus I divided by M raised to M minus 1, where I is your nominal rate and your M is the number of compounding periods per year. Okay, for example, Disney Incorporated deposits money in a bank that pays 10% nominal interest rate and compounds the interest semi-annually. What is the EIR? So let's substitute your formula. Your formula again for EIR is 1 plus interest divided by M raised to M minus 1, where I is your nominal rate and M is the number of compounding periods per year. So, 1 plus magkaning ating nominal rate? It's 10%. Magkaning ating compounding? It's 2 because semi-annual. Raised to 2 less 1. So, magkano yan? 0.10 divided by 2 plus 1 times 1.05, you'll get 1.1025 minus 1, you'll get your EIR as 10.25%. Clear? Assuming that it compounds interest quarterly, what is the EIR? So, since quarterly na siya, ang number of compounding na natin is 4. Therefore, 0.10 divided by 4, that is 0.025 plus 1, that's 1.025 times 1.025, you'll get 1.0506 times 1.025, you'll get 1.0769 times 1.025, you'll get 1.1038, and you less 1, so you'll get 1.1038 or 10.38%. Clear? Now we move to the computation of your future value when there is unequal payments or yung uneven cash flows. So how do we compute for your future value with uneven cash flows? That is found by adding up each payment adjusted for the number of periods in which the interest is earned. Here, etong NT na ito, your exponent NT is your number of periods in which your interest is earned. So, for example, given this problem, wherein, sabihin natin si Mr. A, puts up $100 in period 1, $300 in period 2, period 3, period 4, and $500 in period 5. How much is his future value at the end of 5 years given the interest rate of 12%? So, for time 0, period 0, wala pa, di ba? And in period 1, meron siyang in-invest na $100. Ilang periods mag-earn ng interest si $100? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, what is your future value interest factor or your FVIF for 4 periods? That is 1.5735, which is 1.12 times 1.12 times 1.12 times 1.12. You get 1.5735. Kaya 1.12, that is 1 plus 12% na interest rate. So, 1.5735 times $100, you'll get $157.35, also same dito. And for period 2, wherein he invested $300, ilang periods mag-earn ng interest si $300 invested in period 2? That is 3 periods, 1, 2, and 3. Diba? So, your FVIF is 1.4049, which you get by 1.12 times 1.12 times 1.12. You get 1.40.49. You multiply that with your cash flow na $300, you'll get $421.48. Same din dito. For the third period, wherein nag-invest na naman siya ng $300, for ilang period ito mag-earn ng interest? You'll have 1 and 2. So, that's 2 periods. So, ano yung ating FVIF? You have 1.25.44, which is 1.12 times 1.12. Bakit 1.12? That is 1 plus 12% interest. So, 1.2544 times 300 na cash flow, you'll get $376.32. Same din dito. And the cash flow of $300 in the fourth period, ilang beses yang mag-earn ng interest until the end of the fifth period? That is 1, di ba? So, 1.12 times 300, you'll get $366. Same din dito. And at the end of 5th year, meron pa siyang cash flow na $500. Ilan pa ang interest periods na ma-earn yan? Wala na. So, that is just $500. That's just 1. So, if you sum these payments from period 1 to period 5, you'll get 500 plus 336 plus 376.32 plus 421.48 plus 157.35. You'll get 1791.15. Okay? Which is also this. Clear? Another example. A firm plans to deposit 2,000 pesos today and 1,500 1 year from now at BPI. No future deposits or withdrawals are made, and the bank pays 10% interest compounded annually. How much is the future value at the end of 4 years? How do we compute for your future value at the end of 4 years? We need to determine first your future value interest factor or your FVIF. For period 1, that's 1.1, 1.10. For year 2, that's 1.21, which is 1.1 times 1.1, you'll get 1.21. And for the third year, that is 1 times 1.1, you'll get 1.331 times 1.1. For your fourth year, you'll get 1.4641. So, ilang periods mag-earn ng interest si dineposit niya today? At the end of 4 years, it will earn interest in 4 periods. That's why you raise this into 4. So, ano yung ating FBIF at 4th period? That is your 1.464. Kaya ito siya. And the 1,500 pesos deposited 1 year from today, at the end of 4 years, it will have to earn interest in 3 periods. That's why we'll use the FVIF in period 3 na 1.331. So, we can now compute. 2,000 times 1.464, you'll get 2,928 plus yung 1,500 times 1.331, you'll get 1,996.50. You add that, plus 2,928, you'll get 4,924.50, your future value at the end of 4 years. Clear? Now, what about the computation of your future value with equal payments? Before that, ano muna ang annuity? Pag sinabi nating annuity, it is a stream of equal payments made at a regular time intervals. Meron tayong dalawang uri ng annuity. Ano yan? We have the ordinary annuity and your annuity due. When you say ordinary annuity, it is one which payments or receipts occurs at the end of the period, and we also call this your regular or your deferred annuity. Kapag sinabi naman nating annuity due, it is one which payments or receipts occurs at the beginning of each period. Ano yung pinaka-distinction? For ordinary annuity, it occurs at the end of the period. While for your annuity due, it occurs at the beginning of the period. Now, how do we compute for your FVOA or your future value of ordinary annuity? So, your FVOA is equal to your annuity payment times your future value interest factor of annuity, or FVFA, your future value interest factor of an annuity for interest rate and time period. So remember, your FVOA is A times your FVFA, where FVOA is your future value of an ordinary annuity. Your A is the amount of fixed annuity payment, And your FVFA is your future value interest factor of annuity for interest rate and time period. Now let's try to solve. Crystal Corporation deposits 1,000 pesos at the end of each 3 consecutive years in bank paying 10% interest compounded annually. What is the value at the end of third year? So again, your formula for computing your future value of ordinary annuity is A times FVFA. Let's substitute. Magkano yung iyong annuity payments? That is 1,000 pesos. Ano yung ating FVFA or your future value interest factor? For period 1, syempre wala yang compounding. Why? Because it was deposited at the end of the period 1. So, it remains at 1 times 1,000, you get 1,000. At period 2, meron na siyang isang compounding. So, that is 1 plus your interest rate na 10%. So, 1 times 1.1, you get 1.1 times 1,000, you get 1,100. And 1.1 times 1.1, you'll get 1.21 your FVFA for your third period. Multiply that with your annuity payment na 1,000, you'll get 1,210. So, if you add this, you'll get 3,310 or your future value of ordinary annuity at the end of 3 years. You can also compute this by multiplying your annuity payment na 1,000 with your FVFA at the end of 3 years na 3.31. That is 1 plus 1.1 plus 1.21. You'll get 3,310 pesos. Pareho lang. Okay? Ano naman ngayon yung sa annuity due? Sabi nga natin kanina, pag ordinary annuity, this occurs at the end, while in annuity due, it occurs at the beginning. So, paano natin kinocompute ang inyong future value of annuity due? So, that is your FV add is equal to your annuity payments times your FVFA times 1 plus interest. So, for example, you have here Crystal Corporation deposits 1,000 pesos at the beginning of each 3 consecutive years in a bank paying 10% interest compounded annually. What is the value at the end of the third year? Let's just substitute your formula, which is, again, for emphasis, FV add, or your future value of an annuity due is equal to your annuity payments times your FVFA times 1 plus interest rates. Magkano yung ating annuity payments? You have 1,000 pesos na deposits, and your FVFA for 3 years is 3.310, which we have computed na dito kanina. Siya rin yan. So, that is 3.310 times 1 plus your interest na 10%. So, how much? 1.1 times 3.310, you'll get 3.641 times 1,000 annuity payments, you'll get 3,641 pesos at the end of the third year. Okay, so now we move with your present value. When we say present value, sabi natin kanina, it is the current value of a future amount of money or series of payments evaluated at an appropriate discount rate. Meron tayong tinatawag na discounting, which is the process of determining the present value of a future amount. And meron tayong tinatawag na discount rate, which is also your capitalization rate or required rate of return. Basically, it's the interest rate. Plus, finding your present value is just the reverse of compounding. So, di ba? Ano yung formula natin with your future value? It is your principal times 1 plus interest raised to your number of period. While in computing your present value, the formula is present value is equal to your future value divided by 1 plus interest raised to your number of period, or pwede rin present value is equal to your future value times the reciprocal of your FV pa na magiging 1 divided by 1 plus I raised to n. So, remember this, your formula for your present value. Now, let's try solving. Blueberry Company expect to receive 1,100 1 year from now. What is the present value of this amount if the discount rate is 10%? So, what again is our formula? That is your PV or present value is equal to your future value divided by 1 plus I raised to n. So, let's just substitute. Your future value is 1,000 divided by 1 plus 0.10 na discount rate raised to 1 period because it's just 1 year from now. So, how much? 1.1 divided by 1.10, you get 1,000 pesos. Okay? Next example, JGC Company expects to receive 1,000 5 years from now and wants to know what this money is worth today. So, to get your present value, you just multiply your future value at the end period with your present value interest factor or your FVIF for discount rate I and time period N. So how do we get your FVIF? That is the reciprocal of your FVFA, which is 1 divided by 1 plus I raised to n. That's why 1 divided by 1.1 for your period 1, you'll get 0.909. And 0.909 divided by 1.1 for your period 2, that is 0.826. And 0.826 divided by 1.1 for your period 3, you'll get 0.751. And 0.751 divided by 1.1 for your period 4, you'll get 0.683. And 0.683 divided by 1.1, you'll get 0.621 for your 5th period. Therefore, 1,000 pesos, which is your present value at the end of 5th year, times your FVIF na 0.621, you'll get 621 pesos. Okay? Now, what about the computation of your present value with unequal payments or your uneven cash flows? That is just simply the summation of your present value of each future amount, which you will compute separately through your FVIF or your present value interest factor. So, for example, M&M Company expects to receive payment of 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000 at the end of 1, 2, and 3 years respectively. Discounted at 10% interest rate. Compute the present value. Sabi natin, for your present value on uneven cash flows, you just sum your present value using the PVIF separately. Okay, so your FVIF at 10% discount rate for your period 1 is 0.909. That is 1 divided by 1.1. Kung nagtataka ka, paano naging 1.1? That is just 1 plus your interest rate na 10%. Now, for your period 2, that's 0.909 divided by 1.1. You'll get 0.826. And for your period 3, that is 0.826 divided by 1.1. You'll get 0.751. So, you multiply your cash flows, uneven cash flows, with these discount rates, and you'll get, when you add them together, you'll get your present value of 3,650. That's just 1,000 times 0.909, and 1,500 times 0.826, 2,000 times 0.751. You'll get 909 pesos, 1,239 pesos, and 1,502. When you add that together, that's 3,650. Okay? What about computation of your present value with equal payments? So, that is just your present value of ordinary annuity is equal to your annuity times your PVIFA, or your present value interest factor of annuity at interest and time period. So, Summer Corporation expects to receive 1,000 at year's end for the next 3 years. The discount rate is 10%. What is the present value? So, again, your present value of ordinary annuity is your annuity payments times your PVIF annuity, or your FVIFA. So, how did we get 2.487? That is 1 divided by 1.1, you'll get 0.9091. 0.9091 divided by 1.1, you'll get 0.8264. And 0.8264 divided by 1.1, you'll get 0.7513. When you multiply this FVIFA, or your present value of interest factor, with your annuity payment, you'll get 909.10, 826.40, and 751.30. When you sum this up, you'll get 2,486.8. Or when you sum your present value interest factor of annuity, you'll get 2.487, which when you multiply with your annuity payments of 1,000, you'll get 2,487. That's just the same. It's just your rounding off difference of 0.20s. Now, we move to perpetuity. Ano ba ang perpetuity? It is an annuity with an infinite life. That is, payments continue indefinitely. So how do we compute the present value of a perpetuity? That's just your annuity divided by your discount rate, where annuity is A and discount rate is I. Now, let's try solving. Honeydew Corporation wants to deposit an amount of money in a bank account that will allow it to withdraw 1,000 indefinitely at the end of each year without reducing the amount of the initial deposit. If a bank guarantees to pay the firm 10% interest on its deposit, the amount of money the firm has to deposit is what? So, ano ulit yung formula ng ating present value of a perpetuity? That's annuity divided by discount rate. So, how much is our annuity payment? That is 1,000. And how much is our discount rate? 10%. So 1,000 divided by 0.10, your present value of perpetuity is 10,000 pesos. Now we move to amortization. Amortization, it is an important use of the concept of your present value because here we determine the payments required for an installment type of loan. So the distinguishing feature of this is that this loan is repaid in equal periodic payments which include both the interest and the principal. So, paano natin siya magagawa? It is through the use of an amortization table which shows the repayment schedule of an interest and principal necessary to pay off a loan by maturity. So, to illustrate, let's solve example 16. Suppose Mr. A borrow $22,000 at 12% interest compounded annually to be repaid over the next 6 years. Equal installment payments are required at the end of each year. In addition, these payments must be sufficient to pay the $22,000 together with providing the lender the 12% return. So, how do we solve this kind of problem? We can actually prepare an amortization table, or we can also compute this with this formula to get your annual payment, which is denoted by R. So, 22,000 is your loan, is equal to your annual payment R times your PVIFA or your present value interest factor of annuity for 6 years at 12% interest. How did we get your present value interest factor? Katulad din ng present value computation natin kanina, that is 1 divided by 1 plus interest raised to time or period. So in this case, 1 divided by 1.12, you'll get 0.8928 for your first period. For your second period, you'll get 0.7972, which is 0.8928 divided by 1.12. Now, if you divide 0.7972 with 1.12, you'll get 7118. And if you divide 0.7118 with 1.12, you'll get 0.6355. If you do the same, 0.6355 divided by 1.12, you'll get 0.5674, and 0.5674 divided by 1.12 at the 6th year, that is 0.5066. The sum of this is 4.111, which is the discount factor for your 6-year annuity. If you divide $22,000 with your present value interest factor of annuity na 4.11, you'll get $5,351 annual payment. Okay, so how do we prepare your amortization table? So for this kind of problem, you prepare a column for your period, for your installment payment, for your interest, for principal payment, and your balance or ending balance. So for time 0 or now, ilan yung inutang ni Mr. A? That is $22,000. Magkano yung computed natin na installment payment? That is $5,351. And how much is the interest? That is 12% times $22,000 na balance at the end of the period. How much is that? You'll get $2,640. If you deduct 5,351 with 2,640 na interest, you'll arrive at your principal repayment na 2,711. So, 22,000 less 2,711 na loan repayment, you'll end up with your balance at the end of period 1 na 19,289. Itong 19,289, siya na yung magiging basis mo ng interest for your period 2. So 19,289 times 0.12, you'll get 2,314.68 or round it off to 2,315. You deduct that with your payments na 5,351, you'll arrive at 3,036 na principal repayment. When you deduct that from 19,289 na beginning balance mo, at period 2, you'll arrive at 16,253 ending at the end of the second year. Now, 16,253 times 12%, how much is that? You'll get 1,950.36 or 1,951, and deduct that from your installment payment na 5,351, you'll arrive at 3,400 na principal repayment. You deduct that again from 16,253, you'll get 12,853. Now, 12,853 times 12% interest, you'll get 1,542, sorry. And you deduct that from 5,351, you'll get 3,809, which you will reduce dito sa 12,853 because this is your principal repayment. So you'll get 9,044. And 9,044 times 12%, how much? You'll get 1,085.28. You deduct that from 5,351, you'll get 4,266 na principal repayment. Deduct that from 9,044, you'll get 4,778. 4,778 times 12%, you'll get 5,173. And deduct that from your installment payment, you'll get 4,778, leaving you with zero balance at the end of your loan period na 6 year. Okay? So, that is your amortization table. Gets? And that ends our lesson for time value of money.